we have an agenda before us. Are there any additions or deletions to that agenda? Oh, sorry, Deb. If we're good. Yes, go ahead, Councillor Christie.
I'll move the agenda as
Oh,
presented.
just hang on a sec. Sorry.
I'd just like to add a report to the council.
Okay, yes, we have a printed report, so council and committee reports, 9.2, drum waste. Yes, Councillor Christie.
I'll move the agenda as.
All righty, we have a motion to approve the agenda as amended. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Our first agenda item, oh yes, here we go, minutes. We pre-circulated the minutes of the April 12th meeting. Are there any errors or omissions to that? Yes.
I'd make the motion to accept the minutes from the April 12th meeting as presented.
Okay, we have a motion to approve the minutes as presented. All those in favor? And that's carried unanimously. Now we are going to 5.11, policy 5-17. Welcome, Ms. Hazelton.
Good morning, Reeve and members of council. So we're here with the food truck and mobile vendor policy. This is just the normal review that we do of the policy. So this is the policy that guides the application and operation requirements for food trucks and other mobile vendors which would operate on county-owned and operated parks, campgrounds, and other open space areas. This policy has been in existence since 2018, and we have had one food truck apply for the Horseshoe Canyon site, and they were there for the 2018 season. Kneehill County is open to food trucks and other mobile vendors to apply for vending permits at our popular park sites. In order to ensure some guidelines are in place, this policy notes the application procedure as well as the conditions of operation. A list of pre-approved locations is noted in the policy, and it also notes the number of units which will be permitted at each location at the same time. So, and we've included the specifics in the RFD, which you can see there. Approved applicants will pay a seasonal fee to operate at an approved site from May through September, or they can book a month or weekend for a smaller fee. Other sites may be considered on a case-by-case basis, and written permission may be granted by the CAO or designate. Fees are noted in the Master Rates Bylaw. Allowing privately owned food trucks or other vendors at our sites will provide more service to the public, which benefits but does not cost the county any additional funds. And there are no financial implications to this motion. What you've done, or what we've done in the policy, it's very, very limited to the amendments here. We've clarified the fact that this is really on county-owned and operated land, but if there is a piece that is leased by another organization, the one I can think of currently is the Torrington Arena. If they choose to get a food truck, then it's under them and not us. So if you've got a long-term lease at a site. So we just clarified that in the policy. We've also upped the insurance, so the general liability is $5 million as per current requirements. And I think that's about it. So if you have any questions. And we've also attached the fact sheet to the back of it, which gives you an idea of what the rates are. So if you know of someone interested, they can certainly give us a shout, and we can go through that process with them.
Okay, thanks, Barb. Are there any questions for Ms. Hazelton from council? Yes, go ahead, Councillor Cunningham.
I was just curious, are the rates comparable to other municipalities? Do you know?
Yeah, like we initially, when we started off, we were weighing against kind of Calgary because Horseshoe's such a busy site. We've dropped it considerably, and so it is very, I would say we're much lower than more urban areas. I think, I know we had the one and he did very well, and he came under the higher fee. So, but Shelby, I'm pointing at her because she's the one that dealt with him more, but he was at Horseshoe Canyon for a season. And we've also created that opportunity, which we didn't previously had, to do a weekend or a month, because originally they had to pay for the season. So it creates more opportunity for them.
And it's a first come, first serve kind of business?
Yeah, and they do have to make sure, like, they're fire certified and they have to meet the criteria, some of which is in that fact sheet. And if they can do that and they have to be inspected, then they can come to our site, so.
Okay, are there any other questions? Yes, Councillor Penner.
I know in your RFD here, it says that the one is coming back. Has there been other interests? Like, is this something that people are looking at? And they just, have there been kickers or whatever?
You know, it's interesting because even when we've gotten the food truck to come out here, I think people assume we're so rural that they aren't gonna do well. And they find that actually when they're out here, they've done better in one sitting than they do often in the city when you have so much competition. So I think it's just getting people over that, I guess, hoop of thinking we're that rural and that they could actually do very well here. So I know there's some opportunities that Shelby and I have chatted about that would help encourage them to come out as well, because I do think it's a good service to offer at the Horseshoe for sure.
For sure, I think that's a great idea, and not necessarily just at Horseshoe, but, at some of the other more popular,
Yep.
not just Swalwell's or whatever, but nothing against that, but I mean, it's not as popular as Keeva's Lake or whatever, so if I really like the layout of your little handout, and I think if that's put up on the pin boards at some of the campgrounds, maybe that would encourage vendors. Anything to draw people to our recreational sites.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Okay, are there any other questions for Ms. Hazelton from council? We have this food truck mobile vendor on our website.
Yep.
That's what I thought, so, good. Yes, Councillor Penner.
If there's no more questions, I'd make the motion that council approve policy 5-17, the food truck and mobile vendor policy as presented.
All right, thank you very much. We have a motion to approve policy 5-17 as presented. Is there any discussion to that motion? I see none. I'll call the question. All those in favor? And that is carried unanimously.
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you, Barb. Our next agenda item, 5.4.1. Welcome, Ms. Buchanan. And anytime you're ready, Jackie.
Good morning, Mr. Reeve and Council. Today I'm bringing up two follow-up items to you from the Kneehill Regional Partnership conversation, two projects that have been identified to move forward with. So right now we are talking broadband, just make sure I have the right one first. So just to give you a bit of a broadband conversation timeline, in November 2021, Kneehill County made a motion to present the Kneehill Regional Broadband as a project consideration for the Kneehill Regional Partnership. In February of 2022, the Kneehill Partnership was presented the broadband project concept, where they expressed interest in moving forward and requested further information be brought back. In March of 2022, Kneehill County Council removed the broadband study from the 2022 operating budget with acknowledgement that it could be brought back at a later date for consideration. Also in March, the Kneehill Regional Partnership then had the follow-up discussion as requested on the broadband study and has voted to proceed with the project phase 1 information collection. So I did make an error on this RFD. I was actually just discussing with Carolyn, we were looking at the minutes. So we did say that each community needed to bring back this conversation pending each council decision. The motion was actually made at the Kneehill Regional Partnership to proceed with this project. So what I'm coming forward to council with today is the request for the budget funds for phase 1, which I'm about to explain to you. So though we know connectivity in Kneehill County is lacking, an investigation of the current state of broadband is required in order to determine where our gaps in services are so that we can identify long-term solutions to improve connectivity. To ensure regional broadband planning projects produce tangible, meaningful, and actionable information, the project is proposed to be completed in 3 phases. Phase 1, which we're discussing today and making decision on today, will be the collection and education phase. This will determine the needs and desired outcome of the regional partners to identify the direction of the broadband study. For example, we'll be looking at what deliverables do we hope to achieve as a collective, what is the desired scope of our broadband study, what professional support is required to obtain success, what are our current information gaps, and what are our existing broadband service gaps in each of our communities. If council, and just for council's information, to give you an idea of the full scope of the project, if the Kneehill Regional Partnership determines that this project is viable following phase 1 deliberations, then 2 additional phases will be presented separately to the Kneehill Partnership and brought back to council for consideration. So phase 2 is proposed to be the actual broadband study. So this is what we were originally talking about, and now we've broken it into 3 phases. We're kind of doing a pre-study to our study just to determine that we're fully capturing our scope. So this will be undertaken in the regional broadband study where gaps and opportunities are presented, partnership, infrastructure development, existing internet service providers, etc. So that's where they look exactly at what we have and give us some suggestions to move forward. Phase 3 becomes the actual strategy and the implementation. This includes budget development, the implementation of deliverables identified in the broadband study, and this phase includes any required engineering and infrastructure that would be required to move forward. If I had to do a best guess, I'd say phase 2 maybe would begin by the end of this year, maybe. Phase 3 we wouldn't see for at least a year, if not longer, I would suspect. So our discussion options and benefits today. So Kneehill County has been voted as the lead on this project. By breaking the broadband project into 3 phases, we'll be able to identify the specific needs of each community and determine a definitive direction for future studies and strategies if they are deemed necessary. I did bring forward just a little bit of Q&A from the last time we had a broadband conversation. I know there was conversations around the role of RMA and AUMA. So just for council's information, so the role of the RMA is through advocacy efforts. RMA works to increase awareness and support the sustainability of broadband services, and they are champions for the rural municipal perspective on broadband through submissions to the Canadian Radio, Television and Telecommunication Commission and Innovation, Science and Economic Development Canada. They advocate on our behalf. So there's no funding, there's no project planning, there's no infrastructure. They're really just there to advocate for the government. And then the role of the AUMA is to advocate for federal government and province to address the critical lack of dependable and affordable broadband services and continue to affect many communities in Alberta. So again, AUMA is just an advocacy group when it comes to broadband. Another conversation which I hadn't put on here, did I touch on it in budget, is funding. So right now in Canada, there's no funding available unless you're looking at a shovel-ready project. So when we get to phase 3, we can look at potential funding options. Now that being said, funding comes and goes all the time, but as it stands right now, any of the funding that is available is strictly for infrastructure. There's a little bit around training residents and things like that as well, but nothing that can be utilized for planning efforts. So when we look at the budget and financial implications, phase 1 is estimated to have an absolute maximum cost of $10,000. The reason we've earmarked that for a maximum of $10,000 split between the partnership is in case we do come to a point where we need to bring in professional support to help us collect data. We just wanted to have a little bit of a cushion there in case we do have to contract somebody. Kneehill County's share of that cost is estimated to be a maximum amount of $2,000, again, if required. At this point, we don't have an intention of bringing in a contractor. We have a lot more information to collect before we decide if that's the direction we need to go. When looking at this project, it's assumed that approximately 80 staff hours, which would be me, would be utilized for the first phase of this project. And in the event that the broadband project moves forward into phase 2 and 3, there will of course be additional budget considerations and staff accommodations. So phase 2, the broadband study, We originally had earmarked $30,000 for it. That was a budget based on a similar municipality that has done one in the last year and what it costs them. Phase 3 is a complete unknown. That would be based on the findings and any infrastructure, anything around that, any engineering. That would be completely done at that stage by contractors and professional support. I have attached the Kneehill Regional Exploration document just for your review. I don't think we need to go into it really today as it's all highlighted in the RFD unless council has any specific questions. And I think that is it for my background information.
Okay, thanks, thanks, Ms. Buchanan. Are there any questions from council to Ms. Buchanan? Yes, go ahead, Councillor Swope.
So are we doing this study for the funding when the province, because the province announced that they are putting in, as well as federally, the funding for doing broadband for the province? Are we doing this study for that purpose, to get funding in the future from them?
Through the REIV, we have to have a study in place before we can determine if we need infrastructure. When we have infrastructure needs, we can then apply for that funding. So the province, the funding that they rolled out, it's actually been redirected through the, what do we call that federal program? The National Broadband Fund? Universal Broadband Fund. So, and that's, again, a shovel-ready project. So that's to help you actually put infrastructure on the ground. So whether that means as a municipality you're doing it yourself, or if you're working in a partnership with an internet service provider, that's the only time you can obtain those funds. So in order to even get to a point where we can consider that application, we have to have these studies in place, because we don't know exactly what we need yet. So we really need to hone it down.
Any other? Yes, go ahead, Councillor Cunningham.
I'm just curious if this information could be gotten locally, like talking to local providers and, you know, because it seems like some of the phase 1 stuff is fairly basic. So just, I know I did talk to somebody locally and, you know, what they were telling me was the infrastructure for the most part is there. A lot of it's the cost of that product, right? So I'm just curious what we hope to achieve by doing that phase 1 of the study.
So phase 1 will be completely local. So essentially, I mean, we can go on to the provincial and federal stats and look at our information. We know they're not accurate. Talking to other municipalities already, we know some of them, you know, have concepts and ideas that maybe they want to look at moving forward as well. So when we look at phase 1, it's really going to be working with each of the municipalities and their communities to identify what the gaps are and determine, you know, what we have, what we don't have locally. At the end of the day, we just know the information that we can get formally is not accurate.
Yes, go ahead, Councillor Forbes.
Because we partner with the RMA and they've been collecting the data, and the county has been really good at getting that out to the ratepayers to participate in, do you think that doing this study is going to improve on what they are also already collecting?
Through the REIV, to the best of my knowledge at this point, the information that RMA is collecting is actually just the information going to the federal mapping system. And we've actually had very little uptake on people logging their stats with that information. So when we actually go in and we look at our maps, we still have a lot of holes on our map. And when we look at that information, it's a tough sell as well, because with broadband, if you have anything in your region, which is what the CRTC considers usable, so I think it's 50 and 10, it almost knocks you out of the running to get any funding, period. So for example, in Kneehill County, the Kneehill County building gets substantially better internet because we're connected to, you know, direct connect to a system that most of our ratepayers don't have access to, where when you go out to the River Valley and you still have people that have like 5 and 2 instead of 50 and 10. So it's really just identifying a little bit more conclusively what those areas of need are. You know, we may find out that most of the county's fine. We may find out that we have some major holes still.
It's really unfortunate that because one site in the county has adequate internet, the feds seem to think that everyone has that internet.
Yeah.
Yes, Deputy Reeve King.
So based on your presentation, the Kneehill Regional Partnership has voted to go ahead with this initiative. Does that therefore mean that all the municipalities are on board and are willing to fund phase one?
Yes, so when we were just looking at the minutes, Deputy Reeve, the actual vote from that meeting is that we proceed. So all the municipalities at the table had voted to proceed with that initiative.
So if you ended up spending $10,000 because you hired outside help, from this RFD, it looks like this is a first where all municipalities are going to equally share the cost
Yeah,
for this phase one?
the conversation we had at the meeting was that if at a time costs are incurred, each person would be billed equally for what that cost would be. Again, we highly doubt we're going to have to put much money into this phase, but we don't know. It depends how much information we have the ability to collect internally with our existing knowledge skill set. So, and a lot of it too is going to be the education piece, collecting more information for each municipality and their councils to get a clear idea of where we're at.
So I guess my next question would be is it says that we're the lead, so does that mean that we're doing the majority of the collection of this information for the other municipalities as well as ourselves?
Yes, we are. So when we pop into the exploration document, we can see on page, I don't have them numbered, so between number 3 and 4, what we pitched to the committee was that we would require approximately 15 hours from each of the municipalities in order to just have the conversations with them to see what their planning structures currently look like and what their gaps are, and that the project lead, which Kneehill County was voted to be, would collect the 80 hours, or would participate about 80 hours.
Okay, and so that person is you?
That person would be me. Don't get me wrong, I'm sure I'm going to call Will, but right now that person is me.
Okay, so the expectation is that each of the municipalities is going through their administration going to contribute 15 hours, with the exception of us, where we're going to contribute 80 hours.
Correct. So through the Reeve, essentially what we would be doing is we are going to be the keeper of the information. We're collecting it, we're keeping it, we're putting together the information in the report to bring back to committee or council, and each of the other municipalities will have to put in time to give us that information. We can't guess what's happening in their communities for broadband. So there's no specific task list they have to do at this time. It's really just a matter of potentially they're going to be advertising surveys. If we're doing surveys, they're going to be requesting information. We're going to be sitting down with them and asking them information. And again, fully estimate, because like I said, this was just going to be a study. We've broken it into the 3, so we just had to do a high-level estimate of what it might look like just to do the pre-collection.
Okay, and you said that Kneehill County is the lead agency, and in the documentation, I don't see a backup municipality as supportive. I see that being us as well in the documentation.
I believe for this project that we would be the backup as well, because if we're collecting all the information internally, somebody else is going to have to proceed with the project in the event that something happens with me. Hit by the bus scenario and all. And this is something that we're gonna, we'll have conversations in-house with a number of departments about this, just to really identify where we're at.
Okay.
Yeah, we actually had the meeting in municipality of Linden and happened to be 200 feet from the tower, and their speeds were 150 something down and 20 something up.
And through the Reeve, just to clarify, that was being measured on everybody's cell phones, so that was actually their cell phone speeds, not their internet speeds.
Oh.
So for example, if, I'm not sure, maybe Linda was, if somebody was hardwired or actually connected to the internet in the church, that would be your internet speed.
Okay.
So for example, if Mike pulled out his phone right now and he did a cell phone, a test on his phone, he's actually getting a measurement of the internet based on his cell phone speed, as opposed to if I use this computer to do it.
Okay, thank you so much. I am technically challenged, so.
Aren't we all?
Okay, yes, Counselor McGee.
Well, I appreciate you asking that question, Reeve, because I think it highlights why we need the basic information. I know it looks like we're doubling over with what some of the other areas have done, such as RMA but we do need to have concise, accurate information of this area. So I just wanted to make that clear because I know that seems to be confusing for a lot of people. Your
Me
question
included.
brought out why we need this information.
Yeah, thank you. Are there any other questions? Yes, go ahead, Counselor Cunningham.
Sorry, and you kind of asked this, but I just want to be very clear on this because I do have a lot of ratepayers that ask me about studies and, you know, what the validity of them is. So has the province told us that we will definitely not get a piece of that 390 provincial money if we don't have this type of information in place?
Yes, through the Reeve. So actually, Mike and I have sat in on a couple of the broadband calls now. And the funding is for shovel-ready projects. To have a shovel-ready project, that essentially means that you can walk out the door tomorrow, grab your plan, and hire a contractor and start your work. And like I said, there's money that comes and goes all the time, but the funding that the province specifically put out is only for infrastructure construction. If you're an Indigenous community, there's a little bit of a broader scope. And like I said, there's some strange training funds that I can't really wrap my head around, but nothing to actually complete a study of infrastructure.
Yes, go ahead, Mr. Hogan.
To build on what Jacqueline has said, she's correct, is that the grants, when they come out, are for actual infrastructure. When this was originally proposed in Council's budget, we had a much larger figure in there because we were kind of lumping phase 1 and phase 2 together. Once that was removed, we went back and we took a look at that and said, you know, the inclusion of phase 2 right now was probably premature in that budget because we would have been relying on the information from phase 1. And so in order to compile that information in phase 1, that's what leads to an overall direction in phase 2, that we can actually start a business case, some development, that we have the materials we need to actually make a grant application in the future. So we've scaled it differently when it's coming back to you as in this proposal. And again, as has been pointed out, stemming from the Kneehill Regional Partnership, part of that is going to be ascertaining what are the actual goals of each municipality. So as an example, is it feasible to run fiber everywhere in Kneehill County to every home? Probably not. Is it feasible for the town of Three Hills to do that? It might be. And so as we go forward with a regional project, there might be different aims in different areas of the region as to what we do and how that ties together. Compiling that base information and leading into phase 2 is what guides us in terms of what do we even propose or to meet the goals that the members want to meet. And there's a lot of different options out there, is whether that's partnerships. There's an initiative going on in Red Deer County right now that we're interested in. There's a number of different ways it can go, but it largely depends on what's existing and what are the goals that we're trying to accomplish that can feed into a business case and the development of some engineering that, as Jacqueline said, is a shovel-ready project. Generally, when the federal government and the province put out grants, they want the photo op and the ribbon cutting and the stuff that goes along with them. And so their focus is on shovel-ready projects, as they're not as interested. That's not to say it doesn't happen, but they're not as interested in something that is going to be a study as opposed to a building or a tower or something like that, that they can stand in front of and have a photo taken to demonstrate that something has occurred, right? But we're not, as a region, we're not at a point where we can even chase those grants right now because we don't have an associated project to put forward.
Let's go ahead, Councillor McGee.
And just to add to what you said there, we also don't have the information to justify the next phase.
Any other? Yes, go ahead.
I just wanted to ask, are you still looking for both motions that are on our RFD?
No, thank you for asking. We'll omit number 1 and we'll proceed with number 2.
that's the case, I'm willing to make that motion, that council approve a maximum budget of 2,000 for Kneehill Regional Partnership Broadband Project Phase 1, with funds to come from corporate initiatives.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion before us to approve a maximum of $2,000 for the Partnership Broadband Project. Is there any discussion to that motion?
I just have a question.
Yes, Deputy Reeve King.
Just for quick clarity, so this was not included as an individual item within our budget, but it is going to be included under the big umbrella of corporate initiatives.
Through you, Mr. Reeve, that's correct, Deputy Reeve King, is that in the initial budget presentations, there was a larger fund of money that was specific to this project. Council removed that. As we're coming back to this, because we've scaled it back, we feel it can be incorporated within an existing budget area. So the funding is not, the funding doesn't represent an overall issue. We just, to be in line with keeping the auditors happy and stuff like that, we do need to show where it's coming from. But it's more so that the council's endorsing that we're into this project.
Okay, is there any other discussion to the motion? I see none, so I will call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? The motion is carried. All right, thank you so much. We have a delegation appearing at 9 o'clock, and I see they've arrived. So, welcome, Alan and group, BDO Canada. Do we need introductions? Maybe we should do that. Nobody knows Alan anymore.
Yeah, Mitch is doing all the work. Alan Litster, partner of BDO. This is Mitch Kennedy.
Okay, and starting from my right,
Sorry, Carrie Phobes, Division 4.
Lorelei Michelle Cunningham, Division 5.
Morning, gentlemen. Debbie Pennant, Division 2.
morning, Jerry Whitstock.
Good morning, Ken King.
Wade Christie.
Good morning and welcome, Faye McGee.
All righty, anytime you gentlemen are ready.
As usual, we'll go through the urine statement. Mitch is going to kind of run us through the numbers and the audit report and stuff like that. I encourage you guys to jump in anytime.
You need to use your microphone,
Oh,
please.
You gotta hit the button. There you go.
It's red, there you go.
all right, sorry, we'll start over again. So that time of year, we're going to go through the financials. Mitch will kind of run us through the numbers in the audit report. Again, encourage everybody to jump in if you got questions. We're going to do a kind of a higher level. The statements are 30 odd pages long, but if there's certain areas you want to look at, please let us know. So with that, we'll let Mitch get started.
All right, if I can have everybody just turn to the second page, which is the Independent Auditors Report. We have audited the consolidated financial statements for Kneehill County. In our opinion, the accompanying consolidated financial statements are fairly presented in all material respects, which means we are issuing a clean audit opinion on the financial statements, and are, in other words, an unqualified audit opinion. We conducted our audit in accordance with Canadian GAAP, which is generally accepted auditing standards. Management is responsible for the preparation and fair presentations of these consolidated financial statements here in front of you. In preparing these consolidated financial statements, management is also responsible for assessing the municipality's ability to continue as a going concern. Our objectives as auditors is to obtain reasonable assurance that these financial statements are free from material misstatement. If you can go to the next page, the way we are able to get a clean audit opinion on these financial statements is we have to identify and assess risks of material misstatements, obtain audit evidence that is sufficient and appropriate to the basis of our opinion that we are providing, obtain an understanding of the municipality's internal controls, evaluate the appropriateness of the accounting policies used, conclude on the appropriateness of management's use of the going concern basis of accounting, and evaluate the overall presentation, structure, and content within these consolidated financial statements. And we do all of this by obtaining sufficient appropriate audit evidence to allow us to provide the opinion on these financial statements here before you.
Any
Okay.
questions on the audit report before we move on?
No, as long as it says a clean audit. that's all we
Exactly
need.
right. That's the important part. And that it does, that it does.
All right, if you guys can turn to the balance sheet, I'll just do a high-level variance analysis from where you're at for December 31st, 2021 versus where you were at in December 31st, 2020. So quickly looking at your cash and your cash equivalents, you can see it's down about $40 million. You can see a large chunk of the reason why it's down is because you guys just allocated that cash into a GIC. So you can see in the next line down, you have that $46 million in investments. Your taxes receivable is down about $3.2 million, which is mainly due through the improvement of collections over the year. Land held for resale, just land was sold in the year. Your remaining land is mainly made up of the CPR station plus some miscellaneous plots that you guys have. Going further down on your liabilities, your AP is down through trade payables of about $2 million. Deposit or your employee benefit obligations, which is just going to be your employee benefits, is down about $300,000. Deferred revenue, I'll talk about that a little bit more when I get to the notes of the financial statements. And then your solid waste closure and post-closure liabilities is up about $100,000. It's just us accruing the estimate. Nothing has changed on the post-closure liability. It's just us doing an adjustment to actual. And then you're moving further down to your non-financial assets. Your TCA is going to be a combination of capital asset additions in the year, disposals, and amortization. And then your inventory for consumption for the $8 million, it's mainly made up of your gravel. And then there's your prepaid expenses, which is just going to be inventory that you have for consumption. Any questions on the balance sheet? Okay. If you guys can turn to the next page, it'll go through the statement of operations. So in the statement of operations, you kind of want to closely monitor your 2021 budget to what your actual amounts were. And if there's any deviation between budget versus actual, you maybe want to look at where your comparatives were in the 2020 period. So just quickly looking at your total revenue that you had budgeted on your operational side for 2021, you had budgeted $25.6 million. Your actual operating revenue for the year was 28.5. So your revenue's up about $3 million from what you guys had budgeted. That's mainly going to be made up of your sales and user fee revenue, which is like your water usage. And then there's interest and penalties that you guys have adjusted in the amount of about $1 million on your property tax. And then there's other user fee amounts for about $350,000 that you guys have as well. Moving further down on your expenditures, you guys had budgeted total expenditures of $28.5 million. Your actual expenditures in the year was 25.2. That's going to be mainly affecting areas in your administration and assessments. Your transportation are the big ones. Then there's some smaller adjustments on the economic and parks and recreation side as well. So your excess of revenue over expenditures on your operational side, you had budgeted a deficit of 2.8 million. You're coming at a surplus of 3.2 before capital amounts. And then if we look a further line down, we can see government transfers for capital. That's just your capital grant revenue recognized in the year. So you guys had recognized about $4.8 million in capital grant revenue. So your total excess of revenue over expenditures at the end of 2021 is $8 million versus the 1.4 that was budgeted. Any questions on that? Okay.
Doesn't look like it.
If we can have you guys turn to the statement of net change and, or statement of change in net financial assets. So our starting point here is going to be from the previous page, which is our income statement where we say our excess revenue over expenditures of $8 million. And then we take all the non-financial asset items and we adjust them back. So we have the acquisition of TCA, of $8 million. And then there's the amortization on the TCA of $6 million. And then there's the proceeds that you guys have received through the disposal of your capital assets in the year of $540,000. And then moving further down, it's just the changes in your prepaids, purchases, and inventory used for consumption, and the use of inventory for consumption. And that gets you to your net change of $6.1 million in your net financial assets. So your ending net financial assets at the end of the year is the $53 million. And your net financial assets is going to be your assets and your liabilities, which were on that balance sheet. Any questions on that one? That one's sometimes a little confusing for some people. Okay. Next page, we'll go over the statement of cash flows. This is just going to show you or highlight the movement of your cash in the year. So once again, our starting point is going to be our excess of revenue over expenditures from our income statement. And then we take our non-cash items that are made up within that $8 million. So amortization is a non-cash item, so we have to add that back. And then the net loss and disposal of TCA, that's just an accounting loss that we have to add back as well. Or an accounting gain, I should say. And then we look at changes in non-cash operating balances. So these are just changes in the balance sheet. So if you were to look at your balance sheet from 2021 to 2020, these are the changes for the year. So your taxes receivable is down the $3.2 million, which is making a significant portion of that shift. Then the inventory held for resale, you ended up selling some land in the year. And then there's the change in accounts payable of $2 million, and then a change in deferred revenue of $770,000. And we move further down on the capital transactions. You guys ended up buying the $8 million in capital assets for the year, and then you'd received about $540,000 in proceeds from the disposal of capital assets. And then this is just you guys purchasing investments of $46 million worth of GICs. And so your net cash at the beginning of the year was $45.5 million. Your cash and cash equivalents at the end of the year is $6.5. Of that $6.5 million, about $700,000 of that is currently restricted. And yeah, your ending cash balance of unrestricted cash is $5.8 million. Any questions on that? Okay. If I can have you guys turn to page 10 of your financial statements, I'll quickly go over some of these notes here. And if I go past a note that you guys would like me to stop and talk more on, please let me know. So starting with note 1 here, your cash and cash equivalents. The county has an undrawn line of credit of $2.5 million if the county needs that money for whatever reason. Moving further down, you can kind of see the restricted cash amounts that we noted on the statement of cash flow of $688,000. This is just what the restricted cash amounts are. And then you can see on note 2 just below, it's your GIC for $46 million. It's going to be made up of multiple GICs, and the interest rate, or rather the return that you're going to get on that, is going to vary between 1.3% to 1.75%. And that GIC will mature January 2024. Okay, if I can get you guys to go to page 13, and then I'll just quickly talk about your deferred revenue. So your opening balance for deferred revenue is mainly made up of your capital and operating grants in the year. In the year, you guys had received about $4.5 million in capital and operating grants. So the combination of the opening balance plus the contributions received, you had about roughly $10 million in grant amounts for the year, but you had recognized about 5.3 of that, mostly due to capital projects that you were working on throughout the year. As a direct result, your ending balance in your deferred revenue is going to be the $4.9 million, which is going to be made up of some amounts from previous years plus amounts received in the current year not yet recognized. Okay. We can have you guys turn to your accumulated surplus page, which is page 18. So the equity of a municipality is essentially broken up into three main categories. More specifically, your equity is essentially the accounting value of the municipality as a whole. So the way it gets broken up is you have your unrestricted surplus, your reserves, and your equity in TCA. So your equity in TCA is essentially the value of your capital assets as at today, meaning that your accounting value, your accounting equity in just in your capital assets alone is $118 million, $119 million. And then you have your reserves, which is your restricted amounts, which you have set aside for future projects of $49 million, 49.6. And then you have your unrestricted surplus of about $3.4 million. So of your restricted reserves of $49.6 million, just looking at your cash and your investments alone, you have $52.5 million, which is a combination of your $6.5 million in cash and your $46 million in investments. So basically what I'm trying to highlight here is that your reserves are sufficiently funded right now, which is a good sign to have. It's kind of all I have to talk on the change of accumulated surplus. I'm not sure if you guys have any questions on that note in particular. It's another one of those weird notes that are kind of creates confusion sometimes.
Intentionally too, I suppose.
Pardon me?
Intentionally too, I suppose.
If I can have you guys turn to page 20, I'll go through your expense by object note here. So when I went through the income statement earlier, which was on the essentially the third page or fourth page, you could see the expenses highlighted by department. So you had like your parks and recreational amounts, and then you had your administrative amounts. This note 17 is your expense by object. It's the exact total amount of expenses, just displayed completely differently from the income statement. It just shows you what your actual expenses were in the year by object. So you have your salaries and wages, your amortization, your materials, goods, and utilities. I particularly like this note because it just displays, it gives you a different view of kind of what you spent money on in the year. So. Okay, and then if I could have you guys please turn to page 22, which is your debt limit note. So your debt limit note is driven through a formula under the MGA. And so basically the way this formula works is it takes your total operating revenue in the year and then it multiplies it by 1.5. So every year, your total debt limit is going to fluctuate depending on what your total operational revenue is in the year. So in this case, at the end of 2021, your total debt limit is $42.8 million. Of that, you currently have $20 million technically counted as debt. And the reason why that $20 million is there is it's because of the loan guarantee with the town of Trochu of the $20 million. Even though you guys don't actually have the debt right now, because you guys are saying that you are guaranteeing that amount, it's going to show up as part of your debt in the debt limit note. And then there's the debt servicing limit. You guys aren't servicing any debt right now, but the way that's calculated as well is through a formula taking your total operating revenue, multiplying it by 0.25. So these are guidelines of what your debt ceilings should be. They're not hard rules as to what your debt should be, but this is just suggested guidelines for what a municipality should essentially have for total debt. Any questions on that?
Not seeing any come forward.
Guys are making it easy on us today.
Okay, and then if I can take you guys to my last note here that I wanted to talk about, which was the budget note, which was on page 24, note 23. So if you want to look at the right side of the note here where we look at the budget per financial statements versus the actual per financial statements. So you budgeted a total revenue of $29.9 million versus your actual of 33.3. Then the total expenditures of 28.5 versus your actual amounts of 25.2. Your budgeted excess of revenue over expenditures, which will agree to your income statement, is $1.4 million versus your actual of $8 million. We have to do a reconciliation to basically say, even though you guys didn't technically budget for amortization, it is still under the MGA a requirement that you budget for amortization. Most municipalities don't do it because it's not a cash item. So you had total amortization being allocated on your budgeted amount of about $6 million. And then you can see the reconciling items of the $7.5 million, which is going to be made up of your payment of debentures for $100,000, your capital expenditures for 12.8, and then fund from your reserves and interfund transfers, which makes up that reconciliation difference of your amortization of $6.1 million.
Essentially, this note's proof that you guys had a balanced budget to start, and this is reconciling to the accounting side of things. It's really a way to look at it. So.
Well, I've heard from somebody further down, or further up the chain, that says budgets just balance themselves.
Sure.
It's good to know we can do that.
Exactly.
Are there any questions from council to Mitch or to Alan? Ultimately, what I see is we're in good financial shape.
Absolutely.
That is correct, yep.
Yep.
So kudos to staff.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I would like to thank Marika, Bill, and Mike for their assistance through our audit. It made our job significantly easier otherwise, so.
You got a good team here, that's
Yep.
for sure.
Well, I like to hear that. We already knew it, but I like to hear
Yeah.
it anyway.
Absolutely.
Okay, are there any questions or clarifications? I guess on page 4, Mitch,
Yep.
the excess of revenue over expenditures at roughly $8 million. That will be something, some of that will be uncollected through the oil or through the linear side. Am I correct? It shows on the books, but it's not really been collected.
Well, so like if you're referring to like your penalties and costs on property taxes, is that what you're referring
Yes.
to? It's all based off of your allowance for doubtful accounts. Like
Okay, so that's there then.
it's currently being accounted for.
Your receivable is always evaluated for those type of things, right? So every year they'll go through and look at those, linear assessments, all that kind of stuff, and have an allowance for it. This is the actual recognition of, right? So you still have a receivable part out there, but the evaluation is done such that this is theoretically the amount that you're going to get recognized in that year, essentially. It's the best way to look at that. But there is an evaluation done on receivables all the time at the end of the year to determine collectability.
Yeah, I think it was well over $1 million that was showing up there.
Yeah. So I think we have
Okay.
a note, don't we?
Deputy Reeve King.
If you could go back to your note 23, the budget preparation.
Yeah.
And just clarify that a little further for me.
Sorry, just to follow up on that receivables, on page 11, note 3, Ashley outlines the receivables and the allowance as well. You currently have an allowance of just over $4 million on that, so.
Okay, yep.
Right.
Thanks, Alan.
No problem. Sorry, Ken,
Your
go ahead.
question again?
Yeah. Not a problem. Appreciate the previous clarification. So just when it talks about the budget and the method of preparation in that note 23, is that an issue for us, the way that we're preparing the budget?
Not at all, but from a disclosure perspective, we have to ensure that it's on the financial statement for clarity purposes. But the way you guys are budgeting is perfectly fine, so long as we have this note disclosed in the financial statements.
Okay.
Like, there's not many municipalities and counties that budget for amortization. It's not necessarily a bad idea, but it's such a moving target. And it's an estimated amount, doesn't take into account sort of funding down the road, future ideas as far as grants and things like that go. So it's not wrong, what you're doing. It's just a requirement of the MGA saying you should be budgeting for amortization, but you guys do it in other means through capital budgeting and all that kind of stuff, right? So,
Yeah, so we are taking care of some of that amortization in terms of our reserve contributions
Exactly,
on the
yeah.
capital side.
future look, yep.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Council have any questions for the presenters? Does management have any questions for the presenters?
We've asked them all the questions already. So.
Well, it was a clean audit, so regardless, it worked out. All righty. Well, thank you very much, gentlemen, for coming down.
Yep, thanks so much for your
I think
time.
your office is where, Red Deer?
Right
Yeah.
here, yeah, absolutely.
Oh, okay, so you got a nice drive in this morning?
Yeah, I was busy this morning.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much
Awesome.
for coming in and presenting. We appreciate the diligence and we appreciate the work that you guys do with our staff to make your job easier, which should reflect in something there, someplace along the line.
Awesome. All right. Have a great day.
All right. Very good. Would anybody like a break? Okay, we are going to recess. Okay, I will bring the meeting back to order. Our next agenda item is 5.4.2. Welcome back, Ms. Buchanan, and anytime you're ready.
Hello again. So our second item today, again through the Kneehill Regional Partnership, is the discussion on Explore Kneehill 2.0. So again, a little bit of background on this conversation. So in November of 2021, Kneehill County Council made motion to present Explore Kneehill 2.0 as a project consideration for the Kneehill Regional Partnership. In February of 2022, the partnership was presented the second season of the project and requested further information. The Kneehill Regional Partnership has had the follow-up discussion regarding Explore Kneehill 2.0. Wow, I've written that in there a lot, my apologies. They had that conversation on March 30th. And they've voted to proceed with the project. However, it's unlikely that all of the municipalities that participated last year will proceed. Each will be providing us with a confirmation after they speak to their independent councils. So this specific topic, it was conditionally approved on the decision of each independent council to include their involvement. Explore Kneehill 2.0 is going to be a scaled back version of the 2021 project and structured in a manner that utilizes the brand and strategy that was previously developed while maintaining the momentum created in the first year. This scaled back campaign will focus on social media and web, dive deeper into the Kneehill experience through storytelling, highlight community events, COVID pending, fingers crossed, and utilize a local ambassador to assist with social media marketing, assuming that the budget's made available. Noticeably missing from this campaign will be the management fee, as well as the digital buy-in. So by removing those two items, it's going to greatly impact the amount of traffic that we received through the campaign. However, we'll be able to shift our remaining funds to focus more on our targeted market. So I believe when you were presented the findings of the project last year, our overall reach after the digital buy-in was just over 9 million, if I'm correct. We're not going to see those numbers again, but we're going to focus on the viewers and the followers that we've already obtained, and we're really just going to grow on that viewership. And we've done that to reduce the overall budget item as it moves forward. So discussion, options, and benefits. This project may be eligible for the new Travel Alberta Rural Development and Promotion Funding Program. However, the project scope will need to be retooled. This is a new budget stream that Travel Alberta has released. So it's not in line with the way we've structured our project to this point. So we are going to have to retool a little bit. The funding deadline is going to be tight. However, we're going to make our best effort to complete a submission prior to the May 13th deadline. At the time of completion of this RFD, it's unclear what municipalities will be participating in the project. However, the scope and the budget will be amended based on the partner commitment, and the grant application will be completed accordingly. So as of today, we do know conclusively that the town of Three Hills has opted out, and the town of Linden and I believe the village of Acme have both opted in. And I have to reach out to our other partners as they needed an extension so they could present their councils. So when we look at the final financial and staffing implications, the base project budget was set at $15,167.60, with any additional funding requests to be put through the Travel Alberta grant. So essentially, to come up with this funding model, what we did is we looked at a base budget and said, okay, what do we need to proceed if we want to look specifically at our digital marketing, potentially bringing in an ambassador, and doing a few separate projects like that. That dollar amount we could work with was about $15,000. So once we came up with that number, we said, okay, what is the cost share going to look like this year? So last year, Kneehill County paid the majority of the project fund because we had already put together a project plan to do our own tourism project. And when we sat down and looked at it, we said, okay, if we're doing it anyway, how can we do it regionally? When we looked at it this year and we talked to each of the municipalities following the project, one of the concerns was brought forward is how does it become more equitable for each of the partners? And that includes ourselves. So what we did is we looked at that base budget and we said, okay, well, let's do it on a per capita. Because in reality, as we're doing these promotions, each municipality has a different number of items that can actually be promoted to the campaign. The smaller the community, the less businesses and destinations. The larger, the more that there's available. So the magic number we came up with was $1.40 per person per capita. So you can see there how the budget layout has been calculated, and that's the request that was put forward to the municipalities. And that works out to, I believe, 2 to 3 hours per week. 2 to 3 hours per week for each municipality, with the project lead being 10 to 15 hours a week. Kneehill County has been voted in again as the project lead. And we do have a project backup for this project. So right now our backup is the town of Trochu, and a member of their staff has been trained to take over this project in the event of an emergency. However, moving forward, once I can get the training complete, the village of Acme has come forward and said they'll be the project backup for us in case something goes awry. That way we don't have to train anybody internally to take over the campaign in the event of an emergency. And I think that covers the basis of the scope. Again, we have the exploration document attached if anybody wants me to go through it. Otherwise, we can open it to questions.
Any questions from council for Ms. Buchanan? Go ahead, Councillor Penner.
Just wondering, you wrote in there, we're going to focus on more targeted markets. Just what were some of those highlighted targeted markets you're thinking?
So when we looked at the stats that we got last year, we know conclusively the destinations and the sites that received the most public impact would be things like camping and golf, so we can focus in a little bit more on that, as well as unique accommodations. We know a little bit better about our target market, so we know it's primarily women, 35 to 55. We do actually, between our two feeds, have just over 1,000, maybe 1,200 followers that we're actually promoting to. We know the majority of them are actually still local. Secondarily, they're from Calgary, so we can narrow down our marketing dollars a little bit that way.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Foltz.
It's okay. Who would you be choosing as a local ambassador?
Through the reef, so a local ambassador. As I said, the Travel Alberta funding and the budget has shifted a little bit, so we'll have to make a request to Travel Alberta to get those funds to do a local ambassador. At that point, it would go to a request for proposal. We would like to see them more local than they were last year, just so that they have a greater feel for the area and a better understanding of the area and kind of the priority locations in it. But it would be a request for a proposal situation, assuming the budget comes forward from Travel Alberta.
Just a question for you, Jacqueline. There is a meeting coming up May the 13th in Drumheller with Travel Alberta and Tourism Industry Association. Are you attending that meeting?
Yes, I am.
Okay, because I've been asked to attend also, but okay.
Yep.
So we'll have an opportunity there to push our proposals?
It will be past the funding deadline, but we will have an opportunity to at least meet our interim Travel Alberta representative, which we have not had the opportunity to meet as of yet.
David Goldstein.
No, David is the CEO.
CEO, yeah.
CEO. We have a gentleman named Cameron is the actual destination development person. So ours left just around Christmas, and they just have a temporary position in there right now.
Oh, all right. Oh, thanks for the info. Yes, go ahead, Councillor Foltz.
So now that the town of Three Hills has pulled out, and you've budgeted for the 4,000, just over 4, is the county going to have to pick up that 4,000?
No, we're going to reduce our budget accordingly.
Okay.
So whatever we have based on that per capita with the remaining amount, that's what we're going to budget. So that's why we know conclusively already the ambassador's out unless we receive Travel Alberta funding. Unfortunately, those decisions were made after this RFD was submitted, so.
Go ahead, Councillor Cunningham.
So just to clarify, if this Travel Alberta grant comes through, then that would change the amount that the county would be putting in? No?
It would not. So we restructured it this year because that's how we did it last year, and it left everything way too up in the air to be able to even complete the project in a timely manner. So the funding that we have as a base budget will be the base budget, and any funding we get over and above that amount will go to our larger projects. So our original project plan, we had actually hoped to complete a standalone website, but with the restructuring of the Travel Alberta grant, they don't do websites anymore. So that's just going to be scratched from the project plan. So we just have to retool the entire program a little bit to see what funds we can get, but those bigger ticket items are what we're hoping to get through Travel Alberta. The base budget specifically is going to be some social media marketing, some print marketing, potentially having, you know, a small influencer visit, things like that. And if it's not in the money, we'll cut it.
Okay, so what are council's wishes here? Councillor McGee.
Yeah, first one, just to make the comment that I've heard from various people how this has benefited our area. I think for me, it's been frustrating because a lot of our assets that we have in our area doesn't necessarily see the traffic move into our assets. They go into other Travel Alberta sites more commonly understood and known. And so the opportunity to bring people into our community to create sustainability is a high factor for why I would like to say that we move that the council confirm the county's participation in the Kneehill Regional Partnership, Explore Kneehill 2.0 tourism project to take place throughout 2022.
Okay, so we have a motion before us to confirm council's participation, county's participation in Kneehill 2.0 tourism. Are we good with that, Ms. Buchanan?
Yes.
Got a puzzled look.
Sorry, I'm trying to find it on the screen. I just want to verify this is a two-part question. So one is to
there's
approve
two.
our participation and then beauty.
Okay,
Thank you.
all right, good. So we have a motion. Is there any discussion to that motion? Yes, go ahead, Councillor Cunningham.
Sorry, and I might be missing this, but so the campaign management's moving back in-house here, so I'm just wondering how many staff hours on Kneehill County will we be putting forward with that?
So if you flip to page just above number 3 and just above number 4. So when we look at the estimated hours and time commitment for this project, the designated staff at each of the partner municipalities is 2 to 3 hours per week to provide content. The project lead, which would be us, is 10 to 15 hours per week. When we look at the in-kind contribution, I don't have the exact hours for my calculation in front of me, but we estimated about $25,000 in kind. And this is a project, so when we look at those numbers, we keep in mind that we would be doing a tourism project regardless of if we're doing it independently or as a partnership. So the hours are increased, but we would still have time associated with tourism regardless.
That answers your question, Councillor Cunningham? Okay. Councillor Penner?
Just a comment, follow up to Councillor McGee. Agree 100%. A lot of tourism go to elsewhere, and while we have this momentum, I think we need to stick with it to encourage them to come to other areas of the county. So I'm 100% behind this initiative, and it's unfortunate that some of our regional partners aren't able to participate this time around, but I'm 100% behind this.
Yes, go ahead, Councillor McGee.
Well, my sales pitch to add to that would also be that I think whenever we have an opportunity to leverage our own assets as a county in a partnership aspect to our towns and villages within here, I think it makes for a greater outcome for us as well as for those villages. And it also builds great relationship and understanding of who we are. To be sustainable, we need people to love us. a little bit, and this is a great way to get known. It's been recognized at the Economic Development Council conference as well as a very fascinating and great project of regional work and exceptional. And so I think we're also going to be looked at a provincial level at the innovative, great way of working together. And so outside of the other logical reasons, being great neighbors and great regional partners is another great reason for this project. I think it ticks a lot of boxes.
I would tend to agree. Is there any other discussion to the motion? Yes, Councillor Cunningham.
I guess not a question, just a comment. I'm totally on board with what you folks are saying. I just, I do look at the dollar figure, and it does seem to be a very large amount. And now that we've seen the town of Three Hills opt out, yeah, it just seems like it's a huge piece of the puzzle for the county to take on, but I do understand the importance of it.
Okay, is there any other discussion, questions to the motion?
Yeah, just as a point of clarification, I think it's important to realize that we would be doing something to promote tourism within Kneehill County, regardless of whether we cooperate with our neighbors or not. So there should be some synergy here that we can take advantage of. So I think that this is a good option for us.
Okay. Ms. Buchanan.
So through the Reeve, just to follow up on that point as well, we know conclusively through our Travel Alberta statistics that for every hour a traveler is going to drive, they require 3 to 4 hours of activity in the location in which they're driving to. So if we say our primary market is Calgary, we have an hour and a half. So we're looking at 6 hours of activity in the region. So working as a regional partnership, we're able to promote 6 hours of activity. Independently, you know, we'd be stretching it a little bit. So working collaboratively as a region really makes the entire tourism atmosphere a little more attractive.
Okay, so we have a motion before us. Is there any more discussion to the motion? I see none. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Okay, we have another motion. Councillor Penner.
I'll make the motion that council provide a letter of support indicating their participation in the Kneehill Regional Partnership Explore Kneehill 2-0 Tourism Project for the Travel Alberta Cooperative Grant application.
Okay, thank you very much. We have a motion to provide support and participation to provide a grant application, or for a grant application. Is there any discussion to that motion? Councillor Cunningham.
Sorry, just a clarification on my part. So even though I'm not really on board with the money portion of it, I could still be in support of the application for the grant. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Unless you don't want the grant.
We always want the money.
Thought so. Okay, so is there any discussion to that motion? All righty, seeing not, I'll call the question. All those in favor? And that is carried unanimously.
Thank you, Reeve and
Thank you,
Council.
Jacqueline. Okay, our next agenda item is 6.1. Welcome, Marika von Braun. We're back. Got it. And Carolyn. And anytime you're ready.
All right, so I've got, earlier today you had BDO speak to the annual financial statements, and this RFD is just to kind of summarize what that presentation was and to accept those financial statements as presented. So as you saw, the county is in a good financial position. The financial statements reflect that. We got a clean, unqualified audit opinion. And I think that's probably about it. Mitch and Alan spoke well to what those are. Were there any further questions on the financial statements that I could include some extra information on?
Council have any questions for the presenter?
She's got her fingers crossed.
And your toes.
Yes, go ahead,
It's
Councillor
not so
Schultz.
much a question as I enjoy the graph showing exactly what everyone is paying into the taxes for the county. I think it's a great way for ratepayers to be able to see that on who's paying what. Because I think sometimes ratepayers believe that they are carrying the bill for the whole entire county. And it's just a portion of it. And I'm not trying to be mean to, because I am that ratepayer and used to think that way. So I do appreciate seeing it in that terms.
Okay, so what are council's wishes?
I think I want to make a comment first.
Okay, Deputy Reeve King.
I just have a comment, and it's just a comment of appreciation. The amount of work that goes into this, we don't even have a clue about how much work goes into getting these financial statements audited. But I know it's a lot. And so just to say to you people that are out there doing all this work, it is appreciated, and so thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor McGee.
And to parrot that, you do it exceptionally well, and that needs to be regarded too, that we're pretty close to perfect around here, and that's really exciting to brag about.
Always strive for it. Thank you.
Okay, what are council's wishes here? Deputy Reeve King.
I'll make the motion that council accept the 2021 audited financial statement as presented.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion before us to accept the 2021 audited financial statement as presented. Is there any discussion to that motion? I see none. Call the question. All those in favor? And that is carried unanimously. Oh, crap. 6.2.
That sounds so exciting. I'm excited. It's not my
That's,
to be
that's
done.
not
I know, me
kind of on the RFP.
Get to do my job.
Sorry about that. That should have been unsolicited. But Tax Rate Bylaw for 2022. Go ahead anytime you are ready.
Okay, so the annual budget determines the total amount of taxes to be levied. That budget was passed on at the March 22nd council meeting, and indicated that we need $24,011,496 to be levied through tax rates. So within this graph, it shows what proportion of that levy is in each class of the tax rate stuff. So you can see the majority comes from industry, there's a portion that comes from non-residential, a portion that comes from farmland, and a portion that comes from residential taxes. So during council deliberations, we kind of determined what that breakdown should look like in terms of what that graph should kind of be, and that facilitated what the ultimate tax rates resulting from that would be based on the amount that we needed to levy through the budget process. With that being said, so there are some moderate increases within the tax rates, and those are just to facilitate ongoing operations within the county. The budget was very constrained in terms of expenditures and where our revenues were sitting. We've got some revenue issues over the last few years, primarily due to provincial policy decisions. So a lot of our deliberations had to do with mitigating that and figuring out the best way to keep the tax rate increase minimal while still maintaining existing operations. So that increase is going to see the typical hamlet home assessed at about $100,000 is going to see about a $26 increase per year. An acreage valued at about $300,000 will see about a $79 increase on their tax bill. And a farmland, it will see approximately $47 per quarter. Industry will also see a proportionate share. We haven't given an amount here just because the amount of assessment for industry is so varied that it's really hard to give an approximate amount per tax roll. In addition to the tax levy, we also have to levy for requisitions, both for Kneehill housing, for education. And so those parts are also in there, and that'll all get through when we run our tax levy. The Kneehill Housing Corporation requisition was $75,890 in 2021, and will be a little tiny bit lower at $75,708 in 2022. In addition, there's the DIP requisition, which has to do with what the province charges us to assess properties. And so that is down slightly in 2022, down to $89,813. And then the school for school requisition, that has increased $163,000 or 3.2 from 2021. So where properties will see a little bit of an increase on our portion, they will also see a little bit of an increase on the school requisition portion. So the numbers we've listed above aren't the full impact that they might see. And that also depends on what somebody's property is assessed at, whether it's gone up from last year or down from last year. So there's a lot of little fluctuations that someone will see in their tax bill, but this kind of strips it down to as much as we can kind of give a good comparator for. Once we approve the tax rate bylaw, that means we can, Caroline can start running through the process and start getting all of the stuff in the background in our accounting software set up so that we can run the tax notices, we can get them printed, we can get everything out the door and into everyone's hands well ahead of the deadline. And that's about all I have for that one for you.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions for the presenters from council? And we have worked on this as council for more than a while. Okay, go ahead, Deputy Reeve King.
Since we're keeping Caroline from being able to do her work, I will make the motion that council give first reading to bylaw 1848, that being a bylaw for the 2022 tax rates.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion before us to give first reading to bylaw 1848. Is there any discussion to that motion? Seeing as not, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Councillor Christie.
I'd move second reading be given to bylaw 1848.
Okay, we have a motion to give second reading. Is there any discussion to that motion? Seeing as not, call the question. All those in favor? That is carried unanimously. Councillor McGee.
I move that we give consent to hold third reading to be given to bylaw 1848.
All righty. We have a motion to give consent to hold third reading. Any discussion to that motion? Seeing as not, call the question. All those in favor? And that is carried unanimously. Let the record reflect that. And Councillor Forbes.
I move that the third reading be given to bylaw 1848.
Okay, we have a motion to give third and final reading to bylaw 1848. Is there any discussion to that motion? We got Ms. Severson on pins and needles here. Call the question. All those in favor? And that is carried unanimously. Thank you. Alrighty, our next agenda item, 6.3, Local Improvement Bylaw Amendment.
Thank you. So in addition to our regular 2022 tax rate bylaw, we also have to do the 2022 Trochu Recreation Area Special Tax. Each year, council approves a levy to be charged against certain properties within a given area as a recreation tax. This tax is collected and forwarded to the town of Trochu as payment at year end to
Oh, we can go with 6.4. We can come back for 6.3.
Oh, did I? I apologize. No. That was the next one in my pile, so I didn't even look at the number. Do you want me just to continue with that? Okay. So this tax is collected and forwarded to the town of Trochu as payment to fund 50% of their costs to operate their pool facility. And this fee has been in effect since 1972. And there's an original bylaw that put that into place. So each year, the county levies this recreation tax based off of the prior year's share of the operating expenses, and then also considers any over or under that we may have collected from the previous year. The 50% share for 2021 came to $62,018. And this was $4,700 more than we had levied in 2021. So we're going to carry that into this year and cover that additional $4,700 in our tax rate for this year. So the suggested tax rate for this levy is 0.0002978111 for a total collection of $67,000. Of course, that will fluctuate depending if we have any revisions to the assessment through the year, but it should be pretty close. And then again, next year, we will do the same thing again. As this is a requisition, it's not a budgeted item. It's treated the same as the provincial school requisition, as an in and out with adjustments in the next fiscal period, reflecting the over-under levy collections. And there's no additional staffing implications in regard to this bylaw.
Okay, are there any questions for Ms. Severson? Seeing as not, what are council's wishes? Councillor Penner.
Seeing there's no more comments or any comments, I'd make the motion that council give first reading to bylaw 1849, that being the bylaw for the 2022 Trochu Recreational Area Special Tax.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion to give first reading to bylaw 1849 as it appears before us. Is there any discussion to that motion? I see none. Call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Councillor Christie.
I move that second reading of bylaw 1849.
Okay, we have a motion for second reading for bylaw 1849. Discussion? All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Councillor McGee.
I'd like to move that council give consent to hold third reading to bylaw 1849.
Okay, I have a motion to give consent to hold third reading for bylaw 1849. Discussion? Call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Councillor, or Deputy Reeve King.
Well, since I'm a willing contributor to this little levy, I'll make the motion that we give third reading to bylaw 1849.
Okay, motion for third reading, 1849. Discussion? Call the question. All those in favor? And that is carried unanimously. Okay, thank you. And we will now proceed to 6.3, local improvement bylaw amendments. Welcome back, Ms. Severson.
Sorry about that.
What about being back? Don't worry about that.
So this is also something that's reflected on the tax notices. When a property is subdivided through the year that already has a local improvement attached to it, and that local improvement then becomes part of the subdivided parcel, we need to amend the original bylaw. So that when I do the tax notices, it is that bylaw, that local improvement charge is on the appropriate tax parcel. So that's where these changes come into effect. They are basically administrative in that regard. There's no different dollars attached to it, no levies attached to it as far as any changes there. It's just moving that charge from one tax parcel to the correct tax parcel for the current year going forward. So there are changes on 3 of our water service area bylaws, the Granger Hesketh, the Selkirk, and the Sunny Slope Pressure. And each of these are listed. And in the actual bylaw, you'll see which roles were changed. They're highlighted in red. And I don't think there was very many, so that's what this is all about. And unfortunately, we need to do 3 readings for each of the bylaws, so it's a little bit a lot of work for you guys this time.
Okay, does council have any questions for Ms. Severson? She's warned us. Deputy Reeve King.
I'll kick it off, and I'll make the motion that council give first reading to bylaw 1850, that being a bylaw for the Granger Hesketh Water Service Area Project, replacing Schedule B of bylaw 1696 due to subdivision activity.
Okay, so we have a motion to give first reading to bylaw 1850. Any discussion? All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Councillor Penner.
I'd make the motion that we give second reading to bylaw 1850.
Okay, we have a motion for second reading, bylaw 1850. Any discussion? All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Councillor Christie.
I'll move consideration to hold third reading of given bylaw 1850.
Okay, motion to have consideration for third reading. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Councillor Cunningham.
I'll move that third reading be given to bylaw 1850.
Okay, motion for third reading for bylaw 1850. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Councillor McGee.
I'd like to move that council give first reading to bylaw 1851, that being a bylaw for Selkirk Water Service Area Project, replacing Schedule B of bylaw 1682 due to subdivision activity.
All righty, thank you. We have a motion for first reading to bylaw 1851. Discussion? All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Councillor Christie.
I'll move second reading to be given to bylaw 1851.
Okay, motion for second reading, 1851. Any discussion? All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Deputy Reeve King.
I'll make the motion to give consideration to hold third reading to be given to bylaw 1851.
Okay, motion for consideration of third reading. All those in favor? And that is carried unanimously. The record will reflect. Deputy Reeve King.
And I'll make the motion that we give third reading to bylaw 1851.
Okay, we have a motion for third reading, bylaw 1851. Any discussion? Last opportunity. I see none. All those in favor? And that is carried unanimously. Councillor Penner.
I'd make the motion that council give first reading to bylaw 1852, that being a bylaw for the Sunny Slope Pressure Water Service Area Project, replacing Schedule B of bylaw 1689 due to subdivision activity.
Okay, first reading for bylaw 1852. Is there any discussion to that motion? See none, call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Councillor Forbes.
I'll move that the second reading be given to bylaw 1852.
Okay, second reading, bylaw 1852. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Counselor Christie.
I'll move consideration to hold third reading be given to bylaw 1852.
Okay, we have a motion to hold consideration, for consideration to hold bylaw 1852. Is there any discussion to that motion? See none. All those in favor? That's carried unanimously. The record will reflect. Deputy Reeve King.
And I'll make the motion that we give third reading to bylaw 1852.
Okay, third reading, bylaw 1852. Any discussion? All those in favor? And that is carried unanimously. Well, thank you very much.
And now the work begins.
All righty, our next agenda item will be Master Rates Bylaw 1854, and who is presenting this one?
Marie,
You guys want to flip a coin over there?
I think I have my answer.
somebody here is doing it.
So this, the item that's before council, as council's aware, the municipality has a master rates bylaw. So this is the bylaw that essentially outlines all of the costs for things that, that take place at the county. So when somebody comes in and is procuring a service or a permit or paying a fee for something that, that costs money, this is a bylaw that establishes those rates. So generally every year, although it doesn't always play out that it's exactly every year, but we bring this forward regularly to council to make updates to make sure that what is currently anticipated or reflected is part of the master rates bylaw. So as there's a number of examples in the RFD of changes that are being proposed to council. Most of these changes are based on decisions that council has already made, and it's a matter of updating the bylaw to reflect those. So as an example of something that falls into that category, when council updated the land use bylaw, there were a number of fees and things like that that were established and put into place. Those are now being formalized in the master rates bylaw. As in a previous council meeting, council made decisions around the dust control program. Again, those fees are now being updated in the master rates bylaw as per that previous information. So that in a nutshell encompasses most of the changes coming forward in this bylaw. It is reviewed by all departments to make sure that their information is accurate. So they do, whenever we go through the process of updating this, all the departments provide input into that to make sure that their areas are being reflected as they should be. So again, with that, the other one to outline as part of the budget and things, the utility rates are included in here as well. Those also council had a large amount of discussion on during the budget process. The changes that council decided on are reflected within the bylaw that's being proposed in front of you today. And if there are any questions, administration can field those. If not, we have a number of recommended motions following that. Again, following the process that you've, throughout the course of this meeting, become very familiar with in terms of the giving readings to bylaws, including the one motion to give unanimous consent for third and final reading.
Okay, are there any questions for Mr. Hogan from council? Yes, Councillor Cunningham.
So, Mr. Hogan, I was just wondering, when I looked through it yesterday, I was just wondering, like, how often do each department review the rates, and are they given comparison to other municipalities?
So this rate, so through you, Mr. Reeve, to Councillor Cunningham, each of the departments will review there's two streams in which they'll review the rates. Sometimes a rate review will occur independently of the review of this bylaw. So as an example, if that's a discussion during budget, like council saw some of what I mentioned before, the land use bylaw that actually created several new rates. So that's one venue that they'll take those on. The other one is formally, generally annually, although like I said, it hasn't quite been completely annually, but generally then the process for reviewing this is Carolyn will send this out to all of the managers, and they're required to go through and confirm that the rates they're proposing are accurate and up to date. As part of that, depending on the rate, sometimes we do compare to other municipalities and sometimes we don't. It's dependent on the actual specific rate itself. So if we have a rate, as an example, like our dust control, we don't really compare that to other municipalities because it's an at-cost fee. For other rates, when it comes to things like development permits, we do have, we have some knowledge of what other municipalities are charging for their fees. And there is quite a mix out there in terms of how they go about it and how they do that. These are predicated on the philosophies that council's previously established on where they're going, and then recommendations for things that we're seeing. So at different times, that process administration may come back to council and say, you know what, we're recommending that this fee goes up because here's the back end work attached to it. And so if we're going to have to go through this, and a good example would be a change to the land use bylaw or the approval of an area structure plan or something like that, that's going to take up more time and effort from staff, that generally we put a lot of those costs back on the developer, right? So those will come up naturally at some points too, if we find that they're becoming, let's say we're subsidizing what should be somebody else's cost to a large extent.
Are there any other questions? Guess my one question would be, I don't see a new rate for spec crew dust control. So that'll remain, that might be updated later, amended into this later?
Yes, I believe, Mr. Zier can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that we're just getting in the final cost for that. So we didn't have that in time to put this in front of you as part of the bylaw today, so it will need to come back as a separate item. So
That's what I thought.
yeah. So the process we'd use there is we're not going to bring that back as a specific amendment to the master rates bylaw, but we'll have council approve that by resolution.
Okay. Okay, are there any other questions? If not, yes, go ahead. Councillor McGee.
I really prefer when we declare days of chocolate or days of golfing as opposed to days of bylaw. But having
So that's
said,
a motion?
no. So having said that, I will conform and stick with the theme of the day and move that council give first reading to bylaw 1854. That being a bylaw to establish rates, fees, and charges for various operations, products, permits, and services.
All right, we have a motion for bylaw to give first reading to bylaw 1854. Is there any discussion to that motion? I see none. Call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Councillor Cunningham.
I'll move that second reading be given to bylaw 1854.
All right, we have a motion to give second reading to bylaw 1854. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. Councillor Christie.
I'll move to council gives consent for third reading of and final reading of bylaw 1854.
Okay. We have a motion to give consent for third reading, bylaw 1854. Is there any discussion to that motion? I see none. All those in favor? That is carried unanimously. The record will reflect. Councillor Penner.
I just want to say one thing. Thanks for attaching the summary. I really appreciate that. And I would make the motion that council give third reading to bylaw 1854.
All right, we have a motion to give third reading to bylaw 1854. One last chance for discussion. And there is none. Call the question. All those in favor? And that is carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Next agenda item, 7.2, RMA Member Visit. I take it that's you, Mr. Hogan?
Yeah, so through you, Mr. Reeve, this item, we are also looking for 14 separate and distinct motions.
No.
Yeah. But we'll see if we can boil that down to one for you. As council's aware, the rural municipalities of Alberta, as part of their engagement with their members, they do site visits to municipalities each year. Given the number of rural municipalities and members of RMA, they can't do all of them in 1 year, so generally it's on a cycle. And that means that every couple, 3 years, we have the RMA come in for a visit. This is largely the RMA board and a number of their senior staff, and they come in to meet with council. And this is part of how they get a better bead on who we are as a municipality, the issues that we're facing, some of the things that make us unique, and some of the challenges that we have and desires that we'd like to have RMA pursue on our behalf. So it's a bit of a one-on-one with the board. They are scheduled to visit us in early May, and in advance of that visit, is they've posed a few questions that they've put forward a few questions that they'll likely pose to council. We felt that placing that in front of you today for council to have some pre-discussion on would be beneficial in terms of that meeting and for council's alignment and how you want to approach that. So there is, and while there are these formal questions, the whole thing, I mean, it's a scheduled event, but there is a large portion of informality to it as well. So it is, there is an organic nature to the visit and the discussion also. The questions that they've posed to us in advance are what are the county's top 3, and I've just moved off the page here. There we go. What are the top 3 advocacy priorities? They're interested in profiling members in increased fashion, so they're asking if there's an innovative project, a unique approach to an issue that we've taken. And how can the RMA serve you better from both a business services or advocacy perspective? So to that last one, as council's aware, there is a large portion of the RMA that is politically driven and lobby-based. And so those are the resolutions that council undertakes and other municipalities undertake, and the interactions that the RMA has on behalf of rural municipalities with the provincial and federal government. Then there is the business side of RMA, which is what they're referring to here. So that is the entity that provides the options for whether it's staff benefit programs, whether it's purchasing pools, whether it's insurance, and a number of other pooled electricity, purchase of fuel, those sorts of things. There's a number of business activities that they undertake. The county makes use of a number of them and doesn't make use of others. So it's not, you don't have to be in for all of them if you're in for one. But it is a tool that we make extensive use of as a way of obtaining better pricing on a number of things that we do.
Okay, thank you. I guess we have some questions to answer. So the top 3 advocacy priorities, I know the RMA has been working with the provincial government on non-payment of taxes. I don't know if there's a resolution come forward yet, but I think I would like to see in there that we have landowners that have lease agreements that have also been arbitrarily negated. Would we be interested in having the RMA work on an advocacy there? It is provincial-wide, but that's a council question. Deputy Reeve King.
Am I not recalling correctly? Wasn't there a resolution put forward that they would maintain landowners intact, like they would advocate that the provincial government work with the oil companies to hold the lease agreements intact with landowners as well? Maybe I misunderstood.
I think there was going to be a motion put forward there through, yes, go ahead.
So through you, Mr. Reeve, Wheatland County did approach us to act as a seconder for a motion of that type. So right now on council's books, you have a motion that you've agreed in principle to support that resolution. Wheatland hasn't determined the final wording of that yet. So I guess the short version is we believe it's coming, but it has not yet been approved at any venue yet. So,
It's being vetted through the legal process, right, or through the lawyers right now to make sure the
Yes.
resolution is properly worded, and it will be coming forward in the November RMA, from what last I gathered.
that's our understanding as well. So it is, it has been talked about, and as far as we know, it's coming, but it's not here yet.
Thanks for that clarification.
Yes, go ahead, Deputy Reeve King.
I certainly would support the Reeve in that initiative in terms of that's something that we really want to see being advocated for. As much as we'd like to see our own taxes being collected, it is important that our farmers and landowners who have agreements with these oil and gas companies, that they also are having those agreements honored by the oil and gas companies. I think it's very important, so.
Anybody else think of any advocacy priorities? Councillor McGee.
I'm not sure if I'm speaking in the right spot about if it's a advocacy priority or not, but I really think we need to advocate for a distinction in what the definitions of rural is, because when it comes, for me, it's so frustrating. I like to see FCM and RMA find a better vocabulary that reflects what we're dealing with, people being miles apart at times in parts of Alberta, and we need to find some more equitable way of getting funding and getting recognized for the needs we have for such a low populace versus land base. And I just think that that is going to be a long-running problem with any topic. So for me, that's...
Well, it certainly is with internet provision.
Yep. It is even with some of the programming that is indirectly through us. I'm not sure if FCSS is still this way, but mileage. There's a lot of those kinds of contracts that come through for things, and they limit mileage because they think it's unreasonable. Well, you know, really, if our clientele has to come 30 miles to get the service, we need more mileage money than Red Deer does. We just do, right? And so I just think better definitions for that needs to be addressed.
I take it you're writing these down, Mr. Hogan?
I am.
Councillor Penner.
I think we have to continue with the broadband topic in one way or another, so.
Councillor Cunningham.
One concern that I saw brought forward at RMA in the spring, and it was from a neighboring municipality, was the question of the recycling of wind and solar in Alberta. I believe it was Mountain View County brought up that I believe in Canada we don't have the capacity for recycling of those products. So yeah, I would just be curious to see. I don't believe in Canada or the US there is any sites for that. And I think in that breakout session, if I'm not mistaken, they estimate $20 per panel. And I know there's a project in Alberta that's 1.3 million panels, which would be a $26 million cleanup as of today. But we don't have the capacity to do it. So I just think that's a question. I'd like to see it looked at, because now we're talking about oil and gas reclamation, and I think we have to be proactive and look at this before it becomes an issue.
So sea cans to the Middle East is not an option? Never mind, I shouldn't have said that.
Don't get me started. Yeah, I'm not sure how environmentally friendly that would be either, but yeah.
Deputy Reeve King.
It boggles my mind that we can't recycle a simple plastic container, and we're creating these huge potential future liabilities with wind and solar, and we can't deal with the current consumer recyclable stuff that we're producing. And it just seems strange to me that there is no commitment. We worry about greenhouse gas, we worry about a whole bunch of things, but we don't worry about the pile of garbage that we're leaving behind. And there's no incentives or no compelling reason for the companies producing these products to deal with them once they've been produced. And I think that's something, whether it's wind and solar or goes right down to a simple plastic bag or container, there has to be something in our society that addresses this issue. And it has to be something other than landfill, landfill, landfill. So I certainly think that the whole recycling issue, whether it's as big as a solar panel or a wind tower, something has to be done. And there has to be a commitment somewhere. And certainly right now, there's a lot of lip service, but not commitment, so.
Councillor McGee.
To add to that, I think the vocabulary that comes to my mind is, what is the environment impact of the full life of any product? Because we have all these things saying, it's better way, it's more environmentally friendly. It's a more environmentally friendly way maybe to produce the electricity, but it's not a more environmentally friendly way to care for the entire life of that project. And so I think how we factor environment friendly needs to be the key thing that we change.
Councillor Penner.
Just a little furthermore, it's mind-boggling to me that development permits are given out for some of these solar and wind when the whole process hasn't been thought through. And it would be nice for them to pull that back until the whole lifespan of this has been dealt with. So I think it's a strong topic we should be bringing up.
Councillor Cunningham.
I guess just a little bit further to that, I watched environmental, it was on assembly.ca, and so Minister Lowen was questioning Minister Nixon, because if you remember at RMA, I think it was Swan Hills that was talking about maybe wanting to put a wind project on Crown land, and the province is very apprehensive about that because they're concerned with these exact things. So I find it a little concerning that we are expected to go ahead with that, but yet the province doesn't want that on Crown land.
So do we have any, I mean, we're not done with that subject yet, but we can come back to it. But can we share an innovative project or a unique approach to an issue that we have taken as a municipality? Any thoughts, Mr. Hogan?
Sorry, I was just looking something up. Can you repeat that?
I'll keep looking it up. I was just wondering if there's if we can share an innovative project or a unique approach that we've taken that would be of interest to being profiled.
I think there's...
Other than red tape reduction.
Yeah. I think one that lends itself, and we've presented this at district RMA meetings before, is around the approach we took to some of our bridge files that resulted in significant savings.
Using sheet pile.
Yes, so there is, I think there's an opportunity there. I wouldn't necessarily outline it as, another topic, I wouldn't outline it as necessarily unique or innovative, but I would label it as maybe around a best practice in terms of the engagement that we did around Horseshoe Canyon, as an example. I know that that type of engagement has occurred in other places, so that's why I'm saying it's not necessarily unique or innovative, but I think it was a good approach and a good form of engagement to, when we were looking at the canyon, to have that public focus group developed and to provide recommendations to council on that. So there's a couple there that I think could be promoted.
Yes, we've used it there, and we've also used it on black dirt trails.
Yes.
We've also, I mean, it's not unique, it's probably not even Well, it hasn't, okay, so I'm talking about the medical clinic. Would that be something that we could highlight
I believe that it is.
along with retention?
Yeah. So I think the medical clinic is an opportunity there. I'd also put out, and again, I don't know if this is necessarily unique, but it certainly doesn't work in many areas of the province, is our, here it seems to be doing well, is our Kneehill Regional Partnership, so the work that we're doing in conjunction with our urbans.
I have had a lot of feedback when I'm out and about in the province, people wanting to know and understand why it works, how much better it is. It's really getting noticed, and I think, yeah, it's something to share because some people can't get their ICFs done together, and here we are doing significant increases of all kinds of things, like our economic development because of it. It's something to really show off, I think. And I do know Amber Link knows about it and has talked about it and is thinking she's going to want to maybe have us speak to it at RMA at some time. She's just still gathering her list of things to do, but she asked me if we would even consider being part of a panel about innovative projects at one of the conferences coming up.
Look forward to that, or I look forward to you doing that. Is there anything else that anybody can think of? Yes, go ahead, Councillor McGee.
I also really think the way we are doing our ratepayer nights is something to highlight. It's a great interactive way to engage with people, and I think when we can share opportunities that isn't about inundating information, but actually engaging with the information, it's, I think, pretty awesome thing that we do.
Yes, it's a great way for our ratepayers to get information directly from the different parts of the Kneehill County, whether that be through the transportation side or the emergency services side or ag services. It's, everyone's there and they have the information ready to give out. Councillor Penner.
The one thing that jumped out at me right off the bat when I read these questions here a few days ago was how we worked with oil and gas right away. I think I know it's been happening for a while now, but there are still some municipalities that aren't doing it at all. So I think that's my number one when I first read these was the engagement that the staff had with the the direction that we gave staff to work with oil and gas to work through getting their taxes paid.
Yeah, there's 253 million outstanding out in the province, and we do not have a whole lot of that. Yes, thanks to the engagement of staff and giving the oil companies the options on how to get caught up. Is there anything else? And we'll just go on to the next one, and how can the RMA serve us better from the business services or the advocacy perspective? Any thoughts there? I think they do a pretty good job of the purchasing side. We seem to, it's quite streamlined and it seems to be working quite well for us, even in the purchase of fire equipment.
Yeah.
Let alone fuel and grater blades and the other stuff. Insurance.
Yeah, if I can offer this to council through the Reeve, I think from the business side, our impression is that they serve us very well. They have their client managers that look after us. I think from our perspective, their communication is good. We don't really run into issues on the business side. So I'd offer that up for council.
I would agree with you, but you guys deal more with the RMA than we as council do. Well, I mean, in the purchasing and procurement side. Councillor Cunningham.
I would just say as a new counselor, after being to the fall and spring RMA, I was actually quite shocked at the advocacy role that they do provide. So I was pleasantly surprised about that. So I think they're doing a great job, and yeah, I'm very happy that we have that avenue to have help with the province, and yeah, it's great.
Councillor Cobbs.
And to elaborate, as a new counselor as well, the advocacy, like when they put up the agendas and we get to vote on them, that's a voice we actually get to have at this level for our ratepayers, and then they bring it to the province. I find that an amazing thing that takes place, because it's sometimes hard as 7 people to get what you need, but when you're a conglomerate of the whole entire province, being part of that association really does make a difference, and the province stands up and listens.
Yes, we do have 69 members at that conference, and the majority they're working hard for us as the majority of municipalities. Is there anything else? Councillor Penner.
I just want to say that I think with who we elected to put in there as our chair and our standing members and whatnot else for our voice, Councillor McLaughlin and whatnot else, they actually have our voice, and they are vocal, I feel. They're not sitting back, so I'm very thankful for what they are doing. I feel very comfortable, to be honest with you, with where RMA is right now. Of course, there's always, you can improve on little things, but I'm very comfortable and thanking them for what they've done so far and continue to do.
Yeah, they're very approachable. I know our zone director, Reeve Link, promotes our zone quite well, or very well. And I know the President McLaughlin, very approachable and willing to listen and
Willing to voice what you tell them.
oh yeah, he's got no problem expressing our views there.
One of my thoughts is there a place for RMA to keep triple-digit highways on the provincial radar? Because there's some awfully poor triple-digit highways out there that are getting forgotten about. And that's rural.
Careful what you ask for. So, I mean, we can bring other stuff up as we think of it at the meeting, but as long as we have something, I'm sure they're looking for some sort of an agenda so they can come back with some information for us, because they want this prepared prior to, I believe, Mr. Hogan?
We will, through you, Mr. Reeve, we'll feed this back through them. I think the purpose of today was just to have some discussion for amongst you as council, largely so that if you weren't in the meeting and then somebody came up with something out of left field that the rest of council started going, time out on. So I mean, if you're comfortable with, you've kind of got where you as a council are at, then I think we're good. But I will forward it to him in advance.
And thank you for that. Okay, so I think we've got enough information to send back, or you want to keep going on this? It's up to council, because there is a motion that could be made to quell this. Councillor Penner.
I actually look forward to the meeting with them, the visit and the discussion, and we can continue. If you didn't bring it up today, doesn't mean you can't bring it up that day. So in saying that, I would make the motion that council accepts the RMA member visit discussion for information.
All right, thank you. We have a motion to accept this discussion as information as presented. Any more discussion? I don't see any. I'll call the question. All those in favor? That's carried unanimously. And by all means, if something comes up, we can throw that in if they have. They're usually limited to time. So
Yeah, they
Click
are
on
on
the
the
big
road,
ones.
because they'll try and loop municipalities together. So I believe they're in Starland in the morning and here in the afternoon.
Who's buying lunch, Starland or us?
Starland, as far as I know.
That's different. All righty.
Just remind me again, if you would, please, Mr. Hogan, the date and the time again. Second, I think.
Hey, I believe that's May 2nd, and I'll pull it up here. May 2nd at 1 o'clock.
Thank you.
What time? 1 PM. Okay. All right, our next agenda item will be put back on the table at 1 PM. So we are moving to council and committee reports, 9.1, Community Futures Wildrose. And I see there's a whole bunch of paper in there. Mr. Christie?
We still got money to lend, so if you can find entrepreneurs that are looking for money and some help, send them to them. We just finished our strategic planning and we haven't got that report back yet, but that'll be the next meeting. So that was very well done too. Any questions? I won't have the answers.
Yes, Councillor Cunningham.
So Councillor Christie, anybody that we might have interested, is it best just to send them down to Community Futures, like if they're interested in, because it can be a current business or a new business that's looking for.
It can be both, and for sure, they will take any application there. The help is there if they need it, and that's the thing, that their success rate is extremely high, and it's extremely capable people, so if they're not bankable, these guys will help.
Okay, and our other council and committee reports, and let the records show that it was a written copy presented by Councillor Penner to deal with Drumheller and district solid waste. Councillor Penner, any comments?
Sure, just that, apologize for it not being attached to today's agenda for the public, but I'll just do a quick review of it so that the general public can hear what was in the report. We have hired our landfill manager, and she's currently busy hiring the summer staff for both the landfill and the recycling department. We are going to do a very thorough review of the association's bylaws, and it's currently ongoing, and because it hasn't been done for numerous years, so it needs to be done ASAP. We'll be done within the next year here, depending on how long it takes, hopefully sooner than later. Municipalities belonging to the association have been requested to go over their agreements that they have with the association and bring any changes or amendments that they would like to see back. Members have also been asked to review the lease agreement and operational agreement the association has with the town of Drumheller, as well as the agreement with the Drumheller and District Shooters Association. So currently the landfill leases the land from the town for the landfill, and the Shooters Association leases their little bit of land from the landfill. So we'll ask to go back and review them with our administration. The association has also requested a standard maintenance schedule from Hall. This was done because every municipality submits different reports, and so we just want to standardize it so that our staff can turn to page 3 and they know that the grease nipples on the hydraulics have been greased and when stuff like that. So our departments can look forward to that here very soon. It'll be forwarded from the landfill team straight to administration. Hollow, just so you know, is the manufacturer of the trans stores, and the association actually has 19 locations, and on them there's 26 trans stores. The association is requesting municipalities, if they do not have it already, on their demolition permits, an area for asbestos. Now, it became apparent here, a few loads came in, and it was from a demolition, and there was asbestos. Most municipalities have it on their demolition permits, but some don't. So we're just requesting that all municipalities have it and it be presented, that the individual owners or the the contractors present it to the staff at the landfill before dumping. The extended producer program update was given. We don't know a lot. Looks like they're going to go follow the Ontario model, and once it's in place or implemented, it'll take you'll be given 6 to 24 months to put it into place and to start. But what does it look like? We don't know. And we'll continue to meet. The executive meets in between our meetings, and there'll be no meeting in August, I believe it is, but then we'll be back.
Any questions on the report? Okay. Somebody want to make a motion to receive? Yes, Deputy Reeve King.
I'll make the motion that we receive for information the council and committee reports as presented.
All righty, we have a motion to receive for information as presented. Is there any discussion to that motion? See none, call the question. All those in favor? And that is carried unanimously. That does not bring us to the end of our agenda, but it does bring us to recess. So we will recess for, council follow-up, sorry. Council follow-up action list. I got ahead of myself again. Any questions, concerns? Councillor Cunningham.
I've just had some questions from some of my ratepayers out east. I know on the action list, it was, I think, Councillor King in July of last year had directed administration to look into the Three Hills East water delivery options. So I'm just curious when that might be coming forward.
Welcome, Mr. Zier.
Good morning, Council. Yes, through the chair to Councillor Cunningham's question, we have received the feasibility study for the Three Hills, East Three Hills water line installation. We're currently actually developing just an RFD at this time with the information, with some background, some recommendations, that sort of thing. I hope to have that come before council fairly soon.
Will that be coming forward in a committee of the whole, or I would imagine it's going to be quite extensive, the information provided?
Yeah, through the chair, that hasn't been clarified yet, but I can definitely, whatever council's preference is, if it's council or committee meeting.
Okay. Any other questions on council follow-up action list? Comments? Motions? Councillor Penner.
This isn't concerning the follow-up list, but while Mr. Zier is here, I just want to thank him and his department for the upgrades and to the signs on the bridges, the safety signs. They look awesome. They're very easy to be removed. So if you can take that back to your staff, they look great. I think they're going to work well.
Thank you.
Deputy Reeve King.
Since he's already in the hot seat. Just a quick question on, what kind of uptake have we had at the recycling site? Can you give us an update just in terms of what kind of traffic we're seeing?
Sure. So through the chair to Councillor King's question, we did have as you know, council gave direction to have the recycling bin installed at the Three Hills, Kneehill County Three Hills transfer site. It was brought out, I want to say, 2.5 weeks ago. It was painted up. It's a large bin. I don't remember the exact size of it, but I actually just went and took a look at it on Friday. It's been there about 1.5 weeks in operation. We haven't had a lot of activity at it yet. I think it's still, we have put some notifications in the paper from what I understand. We're looking at some of the signage, we're getting some new signage made up just to kind of promote it a little bit better. Like I said, what I mentioned in our previous RFD, we're hoping to just direct a lot of the plastics to there. Is that it will take, it's a single stream bin, so it will actually take other things other than plastic, but we're trying to just see if we can direct plastic and other recyclables to that, leaving the cardboard and the paper outside of that. So to answer your question, it's basically in the initial stage here, hasn't been used a whole lot. But knowing that this is a year pilot project, we hope that that picks up. And we'll hopefully encourage that through some more communication through the paper and through ratepayer notifications, that sort of thing.
Yeah, I was thinking that we probably should be doing a fairly constant promotion of that in our county information that we're sending out. I know I had lots of questions about it, and now we need to just say, okay, the answer's here, start bringing your materials, so.
Councillor Penner.
I did stop at the site to check it out. Great, huge bin. It's going to work great. I know there's a few modifications need to be done with the steps and the latches, and also the training of the staff to make sure the recyclables aren't bagged, they're thrown in individually, things like that. But I think it's great. And one thing that's it's very tough at this site where to put it, where you're not in the mud and the water, just the way that low-lying. It would be nice to see some kind of an upgrade to that dirt work around there so that you're not tiptoeing through the mud to get to it. But it's great, it's there, let's promote it and use it.
Personally, I'd like to see more mud. I mean, not necessarily there, but more mud any place in the county.
Are you suggesting that might be a good place for some of that gravel that we're not so sure what else to do with?
Stick to your boots.
Well, you could top dress it.
Yeah.
And then you could top dress it with some unsticky stuff. Okay, anything else in council follow-up action list? Councillor McGee.
I'd like to move that we receive for information the council follow-up action list.
Okay, we have a motion to receive for information as presented. Any discussion to that motion? I see none. Call the question. All those in favor? Carried unanimously. And now we're going to have a recess. And then we'll come back and probably do the closed session. Governmental Relations under Section 21 of FOIP. Does somebody want to put us in closed session? Counselor Penner.
So moved.
Okay, got a motion to move into closed session. All those in favor? Carried unanimously.